hello and welcome to this final session of the World Economic Forum here in Delhi. In this final session, we want to talk about what steps are needed by India for India to take off. What specific steps are needed? One thing we have all sat together and promised what we will not do. We will not make any statements which are motherhood and apple pie. Like, we're not going to say we need better infrastructure, we need better schools, we need better medicine, we need better people, we need better everything. That's like our Indian cricket commentators. The way you win a cricket match, they say, if you bat well, you bowl well, and you catch your catches, you're going to win this match. Now, we want to know, how do you bat well, how do you bowl well, and how do you catch a catch? So we're going to ask some tough questions, and I can see some people here who can make some tough questions and answers too. And we couldn't have better minds amongst us. We have Vijay, a most amazing personality who's been a rebel all his life. He's a dropout from classroom. He dropped out from his classroom to the computer room. Sorry, first row to last row to computer room. That's right. And has been an entrepreneur and a disruptor all your life. God bless you. And of course, with Paytm now disrupting India and the entire financial world. We have Amitabh Kant, who is, I would consider, most unlike any government officer that you normally meet.
Absolutely.
Thank God. And most respected, I'd say. And he's really responsible for pushing India's digital transformation, and he's really doing a fine job. But we'll find out exactly how. We have Gita, who, amongst all of us, is the most brilliant mind. Was that saying, not saying much?
No, easily.
I remember when we used to do The World This Week, now, that was a long time ago, people used to say, that is the best program on Doordarshan. I was like, hello, is that saying, is that a compliment? Anyway, those who were of that era before your time will remember what that means. She's a professor at Harvard, and she's not just a theoretician, she's practical, down to earth. In fact, she's even advising the Kerala government as we speak. And of course, we have Johan Aurik. Am I pronouncing that right?
It's pretty close.
Roughly, yeah. So we have an academic, we have a government servant, we have a startup entrepreneur, and we have a man who combines all three. You couldn't get a better panel, right? Let's have a round of applause for this wonderful panel. Now, you know, it's tough to get anchors to shut up, but I'm going to just give you the format of the show today. We are not going to have questions only at the end, because we're dividing this into 5 topics. And at the end of each topic, about 10 minutes, please ask your questions. At that, I'll ask you on that topic. And at the end, we'll have free-for-all for any question. But don't ask a different issue when we're discussing. Like, our first topic is protectionism. Should India protect its startups from foreign competition? We'll go into that in a bit of depth. And you've got questions on that, please raise your hand and we'll ask. You can fire it to anybody in the panel. The second topic is, will e-commerce destroy small industries, small retailers, and medium size? Is this an antagonistic relationship, or can they both help each other? The third topic we'll be discussing is, has the government got any role to play in this new digital transformation world? Or should they just stay out of it? Is that the best thing they can do? Or if they're going to stay in, what should they do? The fourth topic is about China, where we know they have a $280 billion Alibaba, they have $100 billion companies. Are they our friend in this whole process while we're growing? Or are they going to be an antagonistic, competitive relationship? What do we do about China and similarly other parts of the world? And finally, and really to take off, any country needs just one thing. You need an ability to laugh at yourself. Do we Indians have an ability to laugh at ourselves? And we're going to ask each one of you to try and prove one area, or tell us one area where we really need to laugh at ourselves. And there's actually quite a few areas where we can laugh at ourselves. So if you've got any in the audience where you can think of why journalists can't laugh at themselves. Journalists are above all this, you know. We can't laugh. We are very self-important. Okay, so let's dive into the first topic, and that is about protectionism. As I mentioned, China has $280 billion Alibaba, many other 50, 70, 80 billion, $100 billion companies. And when any foreigner, forget China, Amazon or anybody, Uber, all these come into India, they bring in a huge amount of money. They bring in funds. They're not necessarily bringing in technology, they're not bringing innovation, they're not bringing new ideas, but one thing they do bring in is money. And that's going to kill our industry, or is it not? Gita, protectionism or not?
So I guess I would disagree a little with you about the fact that they only are bringing in money and not bringing in technology. Some of this is kind of embedded in the people that come and work here, in who they hire and how they get trained. So there is transfer of soft skills, if not, the hard skills. Right. I'm in general in favor of, and I suspect most people would be in favor of having a competitive environment, as long as we have a level playing field, right? So as long as we agree that the access of Indian firms to finance, I don't think we lack for great innovators in India. If that is the case, I don't see a reason to have a very strong policy anti big companies coming in. At the same time, I actually do like very much the idea of tying up foreign direct investment with some kind of technology transfer too. The Chinese model relied a lot on that.
Does the Chinese model actually almost prevent foreign competition from coming in? That's how Alibaba grew. They just don't have foreigners coming in. A little bit lately, but even those who came so late, they couldn't make a dent in it. We saw Uber selling out there.
It varies. You're talking about the more recent industries, but China has been doing this for the last 25, 30 years.
Right.
And so initially, they were bringing in foreign companies that came in and were also transferring technology.
Right.
And so that's certainly, there's a space for that to happen. But again, my punchline would be to create a level playing field, to make sure that, because anything that's done to prevent competition is a problem.
Yeah. That's a point, because protectionism in the old days used to lead to monopolies and inefficiency in India, and we hate protectionism. But here, when you've got protectionism, you've got so many startups, they're not going to be monopolies, they're going to be, in fact, over-competition. So do you feel level playing field doesn't quite exist because foreigners coming in have already become $150 billion companies, and they've got so much money, our startups cannot compete?
Prannoy, you need to look beyond just e-commerce. It's the digital world actually transcends the boundaries of e-commerce. And actually, the kind of innovative things Indian startups are doing in amazing things in the field of health. You look at Consio Medical, you look at Practo, you look at some of these new startups like Mitra Biotech. They've relocated from Stanford to India. So they're amazing amount of work. They're bringing in a different energy, vitality into Indian growth and development. Yeah. Now, many of these startups require FDIs. It's impossible to grow without a lot of investments coming into them. Look at even a company like Paytm. Paytm has attracted investments because you had a very dynamic entrepreneur like Vijay here. And, the Chinese model was a very closed model, but India's opened up in 1991, and since then it's just opened up, and we now believe against protectionism of any kind. So we need to allow Indian entrepreneurship to grow. We need young Indian entrepreneurs. We need young entrepreneurs. To my mind, we need young entrepreneurs to take on the Amazons of the world, and we need them to take on Amazons of the world by sheer ability on technology and by the ability to understand the Indian market scenario much better.
Vijay, now Gita said one key factor: level playing field. But when a foreigner comes in, he's got everything else level, technology, skill sets, managerial, we have great entrepreneurs, but then he's got $10 billion to lose, which our startups don't have. Now, you're in both sides of this, so you would really understand which is better, to have a bit of protection like China or not?
First of all, level playing field is a good word, but reality is that everybody is built with a construct which is not so straightforward to be identified that you have a level playing field. People have structures and the aging of the business and opportunity of access to the capital, which is totally different because you're structured in a way that you can access something else versus an Indian company can access and so on. I truly believe that opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs is to build a global company out of India and not give India as a market to a global company.
Right.
It is not just our duty or an obligation, but it is our right to build India as a market, even if it is an open market that exists today there. Because I do not believe that entrepreneurs do not have enough energies and capabilities to fight this managerial, if you will, the talent there. And I'm not treating that it is an entrepreneur versus manager gap, but I'm trying to say an entrepreneur can tweak around the business model with a lot more freedom than a manager would be able to do it if the market conditions change and that person has to have a buy-in at a headquarter back. So playing on the advantages of who you are and playing on the disadvantage of what your target is the business about it. And fundamentally here, if money is your answer to the problem, you've not found the answer to the problem yet. It is not about tens of billions of dollars. I don't think...
But isn't that a little easier to say than done?
I do not
Everybody's got same entrepreneurship, same technology, but somebody's got 10 billion.
It is absolutely not. Masa's son was not a family that would have inherited SoftBank and built what it is today. Mm-hmm. In the level playing field in that country, and there are examples in this room, it would have not been possible in a way that, oh, no, I have the same access and same not or not. It is the energy and a passion that brings over and take over the chasm. Let's talk about the car makers, if you will. Japan created Toyota, Nissan, and Honda, and talk about when they were landing in Japan, they were making this car. They were building cars for Japan in a market which was local. They were not building gas guzzlers like Americans were building, or they were not making cars like what Germans were building. Right. They were building cars which were made for Japan. And when they had built and honed it, they went to the world market. And today we know who sells more in US than who sells more US company or a German company.
Actually bounce that off you, Johan. In our television sector, especially in the news sector, we didn't allow foreigners to have a majority. And they invested in many other companies, Indian companies, and Indian companies have grown and they've far outstripped BBC, CNN. I mean, BBC and CNN used to be, or BBC used to be 70% of the market, now they're less than 7%. But Indian entrepreneurship and journalism has grown, some may say grown too fast and too far, but anyway, we'll come to that at another point. But it has created a huge industry. Is that needed in not just e-commerce, digital transformation where foreigners have to invest with Indians, or can they come in independently?
I first of all completely agree with what the previous people have said, is that...
But they all said different things.
No, but the basic thing was the same, that for innovation and for growth, and particularly for startups, it's not capital that's the short resource. It's brilliant people and brilliant business models to make that, to make profit with that. That is what we have a shortage of. I love the saying, anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I really believe in that. And that, you know what some of the most entrepreneurial areas are in the world, is often the most difficult areas in the world, where there's no support from any government, or even a government that opposes you. You would be amazed how many startups there are in Paris, arguably a government that makes life for companies very difficult. Africa, the same. Some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs come from Africa. Look what happens in Kenya in the telecom sector. And so it's not capital that's a shortage. It's really bright entrepreneurial people, and they.
But capital helps a bright entrepreneurial
yeah, it
people.
happens at some point.
I mean, if I'm bright entrepreneur, I've got 10 billion.
There's more than enough capital around in the world, particularly with the current interest rate environment. There's no shortage of capital. There's a shortage of bright people and good business models. And second of all, I would argue
we've got too many bright people. We don't have capital. It's not easy to raise 10 billion to get a startup and last 3 years against a major American company that's in here. It's still an issue. And I remember before you were born, I used to follow China very closely. And I covered the first McDonald's that came to China. It was opened on a crossroads. On one side was the first McDonald's, on the other side was a huge poster of Deng Xiaoping with his arm like that, blessing McDonald's. That was a great symbol. It was a great piece to camera for a flunky journalist. But they did protect their industries for a long while. They got $80 billion a year in foreign investment, and everybody said every $20 billion in foreign investment, not in the stock market, investment is almost 1% on your growth rate. At that time, we were getting 3 billion. So they had 80 billion. So they seem to have done everything right. Can we learn from them?
Well, they did many things right. I wouldn't say they did everything right. Yeah. There are sectors that we're not discussing today that they didn't do great things about. And also the most recent last 5 years in trying to prevent their growth rates from coming down too much. They've been fueling it with credit. And that's a model we simply should not be adopting, having a credit-fueled expansion.
Everybody's talking about that being a bit of a bubble.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if you look around, I think the fact that we've learned looking around the world is that whenever we've seen growth that's basically been fueled by credit, it's usually been, you know, there's the fact that there will be a crash has been kind of almost with certainty. So we don't want that in India. And so while we're talking about capital, I just want to make that very clear. That this is not about suddenly opening up the taps and making $10 billion available to all startups in India.
That's a good point.
So what China is certainly, I mean, China did some of the things right, which is in terms of, you know, how their own special style of ease of doing business, which is getting things done when people came in and they had to start companies and they needed land and they needed permits. Those things were available. So, you know, they also focused a lot on education. They focused a lot on increasing human capital. So those are the kinds of things that are, you know, lessons for India to take. It's not specific. This is not science that's come out of China. I think that's the way best practices have been everywhere in the world. And so it's quite clear what India needs to do.
When I was in the finance ministry many years ago, when you were also a bacha, we had a lot of protectionism and we were opening up. That was the time of opening up. And every industrialist used to come, and I was just a joint secretary, and these top industrialists would walk into my room as though I was king of... You spend a bit of time in government, you feel like you're God. They really treat you like that. And they'd all say one thing: I'm totally in favor of opening up the economy. But in my industry, there are specific conditions. This one you should not open. So it's great to hear you saying, open up. But are we kind of a reflex against a failed policy of the past, which doesn't quite apply here, because that created crony capitalism and monopolies. Now in digital transformation, all the examples you gave, no question of crony capitalism. These guys are entrepreneurs and they're competing against each other. So is it a different world?
Prannoy, you know, you just can't copy the Chinese model to an Indian soil. You know, and last 2 years, we've opened up just about everything.
Indianized,
no, so
like let me say socialism with the Chinese context, in whatever, China with the Indian context.
So India has to have its own growth model. And
which is what?
And India, last 2 years, if you look at it, we've opened up defense, we've opened up railways, we've opened up construction, e-commerce, we've opened up insurance, pension funds, we've opened up everything. Our FDI has grown by 53% at a point of time, and globally it's declined by 16%. We are the #1 FDI recipient country in the world. We've beaten China at it. You can't suddenly backtrack. You'll be sending a very, very wrong message. Now you want to say that I want to protect my startups? I mean, you can't have a half-baked house. And since when have you become a great advocate of protectionism?
Me? Look, I am an anchor. I have no views. I agree with her, I agree with him, and I agree with you. Anchors don't have views, for God's sake.
So my belief is...
Let me just ask everyone.
So I agree, it looked like that. Maybe you want to protect the newspapers. That might be.
Okay, how many of you here believe the startups in this new digital world need protectionism for 5 years? How many believe they do need protectionism? 0%. Or are you too ashamed to raise your hand? So what do you say when we're not in the room? Okay, so 100% believe there should be freedom of all types, even if it's not a level playing field? Even if it's not a level playing field. Okay, this is hardcore.
That's a different.
You know, so Prannoy,
Hardcore. Any startup here? No, in the audience. You got to, okay.
Indian indigenous manufacturing capabilities was probably, it became what it is today because you had licensed Raj in the past. So you could protect your industry to become capable before they could address the global markets. True or not? I don't know. I'm just saying that whatever you do, how do you make sure that you can insulate some of these people to excel in what they do in some shape or form so they can actually compete in the world? And not just e-commerce.